Ray Gross, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Eric. How are you?
I'm freaking awesome. So, I'm excited to talk to you because you work for Manson Reamers. However, so that means you know how Reamer's made and all the intricacies that go with it. Also, you're a world champion shooter. So, win coach, captain, all of the above. Palma, FTR. So you know what it takes from the Reamer all the way to getting that gold medal hung on your neck. So that's
Yeah,
pretty interesting.
a lot of different things in that train, but yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are experts somewhere along those lines. If you call it a train, in a cart on the train, that's kind of where they reside. But you kind of walk up and down the entire train.
Yeah.
At least you have anyway.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've got to do a lot of shooting in a lot of different places. And honestly, believe it or not, it was Paul Phillips happened to be talking to Dave. And at the time I was in a sort of unplanned retirement. And that's how I ended up working for Dave about 5-ish years ago, Dave Manson.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it's a dream job, really. Having an opportunity to sit in the office with him and just listening to him talk to people, you learn stuff. I learned probably half the stuff I learned was just hearing half of his conversations, sitting in the office with him there. But also just the opportunity to bring him my own problems out in the shop. I don't do a lot of work out in the shop anymore. Most of the work that I've done out there has been with the gauges. I do a little bit on certain specialty reamers, but we've got a number of guys out in the shop that's their specialty, and some of them have been doing it for the better part of 20 years.
Yeah, I see. So let's talk about reamers. Tell us what a reamer is, what it does, and why it's important.
It's a form tool, and it's going to cut a form in the back end of your barrel so that your cartridge fits, and it's going to provide room for the bullet where you have it seated, room for where you want it to sit in the cartridge neck, and its relationship to the lead. So in a sense, it's a fairly simple tool. It's a little out of the ordinary in terms of there's not that many places making these things. But it's not, reamers are probably some of the first tools ever made for a machine shop. So it's not like they're, new or anything.
In a 308, which you know a lot about, you have go gauge and you have no go gauge. So the go gauge, when you finish the chamber, right?
Yeah.
It's a real simple tool that allows you to check and see if you're within tolerance. It doesn't tell you precisely where you are. It just tells you you're between the two, correct?
Yes.
So
yes.
The go gauge, is that the minimum that the chamber needs to be?
The go gauge is, in fact, yes. The go gauges we make are set at either SAAMI or CIP minimum, or for Wildcat calibers at whatever the minimum headspace length is for that particular caliber.
And the no-go gauge, is it set to maximum or maximum plus some amount?
No. Excuse me a minute. The no-go, our no-goes now are +4, and I think that's a pretty standard across the industry. So 4 thou over the go, and they're gunsmithing tools. SAAMI gives you 10 thousandths on virtually, as far as I know, off the top of my head, all of the shoulder headspace cartridges, all the bottleneck cartridges. You have for your chamber, you have from minimum SAAMI, you have 10 thousandths to maximum SAAMI. But you don't necessarily want your chamber anywhere in that spectrum. You want it, generally people want it to the low side. We do get calls for folks who want gauges, or they want a reamer to cut a chamber towards the max size, including both for diameter and for length. I think it's maybe a little misguided attempt at gaining some extra capacity. And maybe they do. I've never tried to sit down and calculate how much it is, but we do get those calls as well.
The SAAMI spec tolerance is 10 thousandths. You guys keep it around 4 thousandths. This is something that's very misunderstood by shooters. The entire SAAMI spec thing, right? Because I often, when the whole quit neck sizing thing that I did, people were just simply neck sizing, and the brass just kept growing outside of tolerance. And of course, you know what, all the issues that creates: tight bolt. Sometimes you can't even chamber the round. You can't extract the round easily. It just creates all kinds of problems. But people kept saying, well, if you full length size it, you're bringing it back to SAAMI spec. And they think SAAMI spec is a number, like a singular one number, when SAAMI spec is literally a spectrum, right? It's spec stands for specification, but it is a tolerance, right? So you can be at the minimum. So for example, if you had a chamber that was plus 10,000, right, from go gauge, you can actually bump the shoulder 10 thousandths and still be within SAAMI spec tolerance, correct?
Actually, probably a little more. When you look at the SAAMI spec,
because they have the brass, the chamber, and the cartridge. They're two different.
Correct. Correct. You have to think of them together. The cartridge spec. Okay, so just looking at the SAAMI spec sheet for any given cartridge, the cartridge, if you look at the tolerance range on it, the tolerance for the cartridge is minus the tolerance direction. So the numbers you see on the cartridge print are the maximum allowable for that standardized cartridge. And they can be smaller and quite a bit smaller, both in headspace and diameter and everything else. On the chamber print, the numbers you see on SAAMI are minimum. And it gives you, for bottleneck cartridges, it gives you 2 thou on diameter and 5 thou on lengths for most of them. There are a few dimensions on that print that have their own specific tolerance. So when you read it, it'll say tolerance unless otherwise specified. Headspace is otherwise specified. It's specified when you look at that line on the print, on the SAAMI print, it gives you two numbers there, a minimum and a maximum. Now, where that comes into a go and a no-go, go and no-go is more of a machinist term that bled over into gunsmithing. And so it's more of an inspection tool. You could think of it as. When that gauge goes, you realize, or you have determined that you have met the minimum spec for that chamber. When the no-go does not go, you know you're below a self-imposed spec. We used to make the no-goes at 6 thou. It seemed like everybody else was making them at 4, so we started making them at 4 too. But it's just a user's choice. We make a lot of arsenal gauges, and for whatever project they happen to be working on, they will set their acceptance range somewhere inside of a much bigger range. And so their no-go, from our point of view, might be a go +2, and their no-go might be a go +8, right? So it just sets a range inside of the full allowable tolerance. And that's what your go and no-go gauges do.
So in reloading, obviously you're talking about the brass being, so let's just call, we have like a 0 line. Let's just say from there, let's just call that 0. That's our 0 line. The chamber is going to be bigger than that, the cartridge is going to be smaller than that line. Otherwise, they'll never work with each other. No different than threads, right? So the reason you want to be on the minimum side of the chamber spec is so that your factory ammo isn't so sloppy, right? Now, if you're going to reload, it really doesn't matter after the first firing, because then you can set it to whatever. You can adjust your reloading dice, and then you can just bump the shoulder whatever amount you desire. May I suggest at least 2000s, around 2000s. However, that is the only purpose, because I've had a lot of people say, hey, well, my chamber is too big. It's out of spec. I say, it's not out of spec. Are you going to reload? Yes. Well, they say, well, my brass fire formed like 6,000s or 7,000s. You're fine. If you're going to reload, just adjust your seating die. Your sizing die, and you're fine. The only issue is when you're using factory ammunition, your chamber's on the plus side, your ammunition may be on the low side. Now you have 10 or 12 thousandths of slop in your headspace that can lead to other issues. But that is why you want it on the min side. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the general thinking is that having your chamber at minimum spec is going to be closer to your virgin brass size. And so you're going to get more life, more reloadings out of that piece of brass. If you're really stretching that brass out and then like oversizing it like you described, your brass isn't going to last as long, so from a cost, point of view, you want it to last a little longer. And also you're probably better off not overworking the brass anyway.
Correct.
So yeah, having the chamber closer to minimum, I think that is, I think it'd be safe to say that it's generally thought of as being, beneficial.
Now, another thing that, I guess I'm going to call it a myth, is that, for example, you were the captain of Team USA, FTR. Mm-hmm. By the rules, you guys have to use a 308 Winchester cartridge, right?
Yes.
Or
a 223, but yes.
Correct. And oftentimes people say, yeah, but those guys are using match chambers. They're using tight chambers. They're using, whatever name you want to give it. You guys are just using a SAAMI spec. You have to use a SAAMI spec reamer. Is that correct?
The rule, I'd have to go back and read that rule a little closer, but the rule, it can't be bigger, I think is how the rule is written, than a SAAMI spec chamber. So think of a SAAMI max chamber, and that's just for the body and the neck on it. It also then goes on to say that the throat can be whatever is suitable for the particular bullet you're shooting. So, we had, very long throats for a 308, and we're seating, at the time we were seating 200 grain bullets, either the hybrids or the 20Xs, probably, maybe halfway down the neck, maybe a little farther. So, they're sticking out quite a ways. And, so the rule, when we got up to Canada, there was, at the time I was not working for Dave, but that was the first time I met Dave, because I had questions about Headspace, the same questions everybody else has, right? And the Canadians who hosted the match in 2017 had let it be known that they planned to test chambers and cartridges, and I knew that there were issues that might be a problem. So I went in and talked to Dave about it, and he kind of gave me kind of a primer on how all that stuff worked. In the end, they tried a few, and I think they broke somebody's extractor, and so they didn't do any more of them. So it was a lot of worry on my part, making sure that all of our guns would pass. We don't want to show up and then I'll have a gun not pass.
Right.
That we really, in the end, didn't have to worry about.
Right, but I guess the overall thing is we tend to go bigger, not smaller like everybody thinks. That they think we're running, I don't know, like hardly any clearance.
I think if you look back 20 years, a lot of the chambers were slightly undersized, and they were trying to get closer to the brass diameter. So, for example, and again from the top of my head, so don't crucify me. The 200 line on 308, I think, is 47.4714, and you'll see a lot of chambers that are spec'd at 470 there. And it was really common, and it works fine. And of course, with 308, 223, you have small base die. So even if you get in a little bit of trouble with a normal resizing die, you pull out your small base die and you're back in business again. So I think some of this stuff is somewhat of they go in phases, and 20 years ago everybody wanted a tighter chamber. Nowadays, that's not the case. And we've been going through, we have a lot of prints that Dave had did that to, because he was selling, right? And that's what people wanted. We're going through and updating prints and updating reamers, and a lot of, maybe not all of them, but a sizable number of them were reverting back to the full minimum SAAMI spec. Because I think people, again, they don't fully appreciate all the things that are involved. And if they don't know those little subtle differences, it's not obvious to them. I don't think that's fair to them to give them something that maybe they're thinking is SAAMI spec, and it's actually a little undersized.
What goes into making a reamer? What's the process? How is a reamer made?
Well, what we do is, we just buy bar stock. The reamers are made out of usually M7, M7N. High-speed steel, and they will get turned into a form on a lathe, and they'll punch out, we'll make them, 120, 200 at a time for, let's say, a 7 PRC. And then from there, they'll go to this, in our case, it's a big old super heavy duty horizontal mill. And that's how the flutes get fluted out. And so that blank will be oversized, and it gets sent out for heat treat. And then once we get it back, then it goes through a few different machines to have the shank ground, the spindle ground. But the fluting part of it is done in some CNC grinders, where you've got a diamond wheel or a CBN wheel. That goes through, flutes them out. So that's the shiny part down in the flutes, and then cuts the two facets that you generally see along each tooth. One's the wider one. It's just relief, just to bring the backside of the tooth down so it's not rubbing anything. The one at the top we would call the primary land. It's a buttress, so it's trying to support the cutting face. It's the face of that reamer that's doing the work, and it still has to be relieved. We don't want it rubbing all the way around. There are reamers that are made with what are called a radial land, and so this is a very, very thin land, or a very, very thin strip. To the naked eye, you probably wouldn't even notice it, but essentially, on the body of the reamer, it has a little tiny land that's maybe 1 thou wide or 2 thou wide. That is actually a radius right there at the very top of the tooth. And they're made that way. It creates a little bit of drag in the chamber, which probably helps reduce the chance of chatter.
Now, what different types of reamers are there? Because I know you have a finishing reamer, rough-in reamers, undersized reamers. Is that all the reamers that are available, or are there more? And what are they used for?
Well, primarily what we're making are chambering reamers. And yes, we make roughing reamers. Roughing reamers are generally, about 8 to 10 thou under size on the neck and body. And of course, if they're 8 to 10 thou, they're not cutting any throat at all, because they'll be well under bore diameter. And so what you would use that for is you're just hogging out metal with those. And the goal being, of course, is to make your finish reamer last as long as possible. So you might go through 2-3 roughing reamers for every finish reamer, depending on your process and so on. There are other ways of roughing out. You drill it out and then use a little boring bar and so on. All legitimate ways of lengthening the life of your finish reamer. We make resizing die reamers. Those will be, we'll generally work with clients to figure out what those dimensions will be. Especially, I generally need to know what the neck wall thickness is, because that determines, like, when you're buying bushings for your your redding die or and so on. You want that neck to be 2 thou under or 3 thou under or whatever your bullet diameter. The same principle holds true when you're making just a straight up 100% resizing die that doesn't have any bushings or anything else. The neck has to be a little undersized so it'll actually grasp the bullet. Beyond that, we make a variety of gunsmithing reamers. So you got bolt bore counter bolt. How do I want to say that? Bolt body, bolt nose counterbore tools. Tools to cut cone in the breech for like a Winchester, throating reamers, muzzle brake reamers to cut a hole through there that's close fitting. What are some of the other ones we do? Small bore reamers.
You have anything for crowning?
Neck reamers. Say again.
Anything for crowning the barrel?
We have no. Specifically, like putting that little tiny counterbore right in the end.
Like, well, that coveted 11 degree crown.
The 11 degree. we actually, I'm sorry, we do. We have an 11 degree muzzle crown reamer, and then we also sell a kit that uses little carbide burrs, and it's kind of has a little adjustable pilot. You put it in the bore. It might not necessarily be something. I actually know competitive shooters are using it. They use it. They'll touch up their crown every now and then. But it's a lifesaver for gunsmiths all over the country, because they can go in there and touch up your Remington or your Savage rifle, hunting rifle, where maybe you got a burr in there or something, and bring the accuracy back into that, because the way it's set up, it cuts a nice true and square 11 degree crown on the muzzle. So there's a variety of gunsmithing tools that we have.
Now Dave has retired. Is that correct?
Yeah, Dave retired. He is probably, maybe 2.5 years now.
Now the shop is still up and running.
Mm-hmm.
What has it been like since Dave left?
A lot of it in the shop itself. The core guys are still the core guys. We did have a key person, Rick, who was Dave's first employee. He kind of retired not too long after Dave did. But we still have Scott and Bob and Doug, who had been there long before I was, and those guys are they've done maybe not every single job in the shop, but they know how everything works. So they're, a lot of times when I don't know how to figure something out, I'll be out talking to them and say, hey, how do we do this, or how do we do that? And then in the process over the last few years, we picked up some new people. Oh, I'm so sorry, Eric. My computer is hooked up to my work phone. So we picked up some new people, and the brothers who bought us out, they come from a family of machine shops. I think their bread and butter business would be aerospace stuff. And so there's a lot of background machining knowledge there. And they're also, since they bought us, they bought another machining company in the local area. So we have access now to this awesome inspection room where they have, the highest end inspection equipment where we can go and calibrate our own equipment, like master gauges and, our optical, using that to bring back to our shop where we can calibrate our own optical comparators and everything else, to help us, keep everything as true as it can be, to the specification for whatever we're building.
Right. I know Dave ground my reamer that
Yes.
he personally ground my reamer that I've been doing a lot of winning with.
Did he? Yep.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
So yeah, he did a good job on it.
So Doug will save up all his vacation and take December off every year. And and he's the one who typically grinds on that machine. And when your reamer came up that year, it was a couple years ago, that was near the end of Dave, working in the shop, owning the business. And I told him, I says, Dave, we should make these like signature, have you make a little signature, and we'll laser etch your signature, Dave Manson signature reamers. He laughed, but
I wish he had.
Yeah,
I honestly wish he had.
I do too.
Because I tell people when I'm chambering, whatever, that they come over to my shop and I may be using that reamer, and I go, Dave Manson himself,
he did
ground that reamer, and because he did, and it's a so it's a unique reamer, and the fact that it works so freaking good,
awesome.
It's
That's
been
awesome.
I mean, I have yet to have a barrel notch shoot that I've chambered with that reamer. I mean, it is,
nice.
Ooh, it's a good one.
Nice.
But anyway, so I wish you guys had, because, the only reason people know that he grounded is because I tell them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
so if you got a reamer in the last, well, not the last few years, but let's say 2022-ish, in the month of December, date in December, there's a 50-50 chance that Dave actually ground that reamer. Not guaranteed, but that's for the last probably 5 or 6 years. That was probably about the only time he was actually out in the shop, grinding reamers.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good coverage of the reamers.
Yeah.
You're with the Palma team now?
Yeah, I was on the last Palma team. I was actually been part of the last 3 Palma teams. My first team was in 2003. I was a shooter then, and I decided I want to make the transition to coach, and it took me a while to kind of break into that. And in the meantime, I also kind of, the local guys, I have some local friends here. Well, you know them, Paul, Brad, who were heavily into F-class. So, it's nice to go shoot with your friends. Right. And so we had, of course, Team Sinclair. We won, Brad and Paul, especially, they have, I don't know, 9 or 10 FTR national championships. And, they would say, "Hey, Ray, we need a coach. Ray, we need a coach." So every few years, at first, I'd come and coach them, and then eventually, I thought, well, I'll just do this for a while. And so I have, I believe it's 6 national championships as a coach for FTR. And in 2013, I was the coach on the Rutland squad, where we won that event. And then 2017, I was the captain up in Canada, where we won that event.
But you were the captain for the main team
for the
USA.
FTR team. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting that. So what's it like? What's the difference between being a shooter and being a coach?
Well, coaching is not for everybody. I think that's really the bottom line. there are a lot of good shooters who are awesome wind readers. I mean, you can see it. You can see them do it because they're scoring so well on tough days. But it does take a little bit of a thick skin up there, because everybody knows when you're wrong, right? Everybody's watching, and
they point it out.
sometimes you get yelled at from the back, so it takes, you have to be able to, not let that affect you. There are times when, you're in knots, like, oh shoot, I don't really want to do this, but you're running out of time, and you just have to make a decision. So coaching is like making 200 little decisions, every 30 seconds all day long. Shooting has its own stresses, because on the Palma team, you have iron sights. You often can't see where you're shooting. You're shooting blind. You're relying on the coach 100%. Whereas in F open, FTR, the shooter can see where he's shooting. Which I think probably makes even a little more pressure on the coach, right? Because instantly the shooter knows that he got dialed out, or called out. But for a shooter on the Palma team, they're 100% dependent on the feedback they're getting from the coach. And different coaches will have different styles. And I think a big part of on the Palma team is matching those styles up. Some people need more feedback. Some people can lay down and just shoot X's without a single word from the coach. So it's you have to mix and match those folks so they work well together.
Right. Now, talking about being a shooter, being a coach. So, obviously I can't speak for Palma, but let's talk about F class. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you have the shooter. He lays down, he brings all his gear. He has obviously a scope, and you're calling the wind for that shooter. And they're going to put the crosshairs. I mean, their job is to put the crosshair and break a clean shot exactly where you tell them.
Yeah. Now,
at least for myself, being a shooter, there's this bell curve of worry when you're new, right? Because you don't want to be the one that has the bad rifle, right? Because the bad rifle, there's no coach in the world that can coach you well with a bad rifle, right? So you definitely don't want to be that guy that brought the bad rifle. Mm-hmm. But once you do it enough and you learn how to tune rifles and you learn how to work with a coach, because not everybody can work with a coach. That's the other thing. Not every shooter can work with a coach. So once you learn all of that, and what I mean by that is the coach is going to tell you what to do, where to hold. However, these guys the majority of the time, they're shooting individually. Mm-hmm. So they make their own win calls, right? Mm-hmm. They know that their score is going to get posted on the team, right?
Yes.
So oftentimes, the coach will give them a call, and they will disagree with it.
Oh, yeah.
And now they have a problem.
Yes.
Do I shoot a 9 or do I listen to the coach, right? Now, the correct answer is you listen to the coach.
Yes. The
correct answer is that score belongs to both of you, the coach and the shooter. The coach does not want to shoot you a 9, ever.
No.
If I had a choice, I would never call a 9, right? However, when the shooters are new to the team shooting, that's the struggle that they face. Once they get over the gun issue, that, okay, my gun's good, then they want to read the wind and they want to select the shots that they want to listen to the coach. Now, oftentimes the inexperienced shooters will shade, what we call shade. Mm-hmm. And the coach will say, give me a right 3, because we use the rings on the target to aim. The coach might say, give me a right 3. And if the shooter thinks it's a little more, they might give you a right 3.5. So they're shading that call. Well, if if there's no communication and you shoot a 9 upwind, the coach thinks right 3 was too strong of a call. Mm-hmm. So they're going to dial it back, right? Now the shooter, they're, instead of trying to break a clean shot, they're trying to figure out, and now they might say, well, he was right. I'll just, now in the next call, you might call right 2. Now they'll give you right 2. Now a 9 on the other side, right? And now as a coach, you're wondering what the heck's going on, right? So those are the struggles that I've noticed. I mean, I went through that phase but I had good mentors. They said, you listen to the coach. Mm-hmm. You turn off your wind reading brain and only turn on your listening to the coach and break a clean shot brain. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Nothing else. Don't think. Once I did that, it became almost stress-free to be a shooter because you just lay down and just do what they tell you. If you shoot a 9 or an 8 or a 7 or whatever, you know what I mean? Oh, well, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So is that kind of what you've kind of noticed in shooters as well? I mean, you were a shooter as well. I mean, how did you deal with all these thoughts?
There are, with some shooters, that was an issue. You don't see it as much for the iron sight shooters because they have most people don't have the vision to shade. They're going to shoot a center shot because they can't do anything else. At least not on purpose. But when you have that scope, you can, like you explained, you can easily shift over. If you catch a guy doing that, he's probably not the guy you want on the team. It's kind of immature. In a very real sense, though, the coach has to calibrate what's going on. And if you're giving him mixed signals by you're shooting it over here one time and then you're shooting on the inside one time, he can't figure out what's going on, and it's going to cost points at least through your string, and it might even cost the next guy some points because he's getting a false understanding of what the wind is doing out there. So it's called a team for a reason. You got to work together. The coaching is shooters. Maybe you can tell me. For myself, when I'm shooting good, I'm in my own little bubble. There's nothing else going on except me and the wind, the target. I don't hear other things going on. I'm not really paying attention to anything else. When I'm coaching, it's the same way. When I all of a sudden have distractions coming in, it's taking me out of my understanding of the wind. It's taking me out of my seeing the cycle. And so when you have a backseat driver, or you got a shooter who's questioning what you're doing, he's detrimental to the team. And you have to either squelch that, train that out of them, or pick somebody else for the team.
It is a large disruption in the coaching rhythm because, right, you get into a rhythm. The wind has a rhythm, and you are trying, as a coach, trying to match the rhythm in which the wind is moving so that you can just kind of stay with it, right? Mm-hmm. And whenever you have a shot, because what's going to happen is especially when you are in tune with the wind as a coach, all of a sudden you get a shot and you go, that made no sense.
Yes. Right.
You're not going to see a coach, a good coach is not going to chase the spotter. They're only going to shoot the shots that make sense. So when you get a shot that made no sense, you're not going to just say, oh, okay, the wind picked up. Let me hold over here now. No, you're going to go, where did that come from? Right. And now you're talking to the back coach or the back coach and the front coach. Or did you see that? Where did that come from? Sure. I don't see anything, and all of a sudden you have to stop.
Right.
And now there's doubt. That's the worst part. There's doubt in the coach's mind, because where did it come from? Is it a range condition? Is it gone? Is it still there? Do we chase the shot? You know what I mean? So yeah, it is very detrimental, mm-hmm. But that's part of being a good shooter and a good coach. They have to trust each other. 100%. And when you get a shot, and that's the thing, right? When you get a shot that's wild, you because you trust your shooter, you have to address that shot. And
What I'll generally do in those circumstances is I have an idea in my head where that shot should be coming up, based on when they shot it, and based on what I think the wind was worth right at that time. Of course, I put a correction on the gun, or I've asked them to shoot a certain line out, but there is an execution delay there, right? And so the wind's changing between when you give the command and when they actually squeeze that shot off. So in my head, I have an idea. This shot should be a left X, or this shot should be a right 10. And if it's not there, then I immediately, that's a warning to me to look around and see what it is I'm missing. Did a flag over here pick up, or is something going on downrange that I wasn't paying any attention to? I might look at other targets. On manually marked targets, you can oftentimes see a wind condition coming down the range just by the scores that are coming up. But having, if I look up and I see this corner shot that's out, and there's nothing out there, I'm pretty sure the shooter did it. And about 8 times out of 10, I'll shoot that guy again without making a single correction, and he'll be right back in the middle, or she. And sometimes I'm like, well, I just don't know. So I'll put a few insurance clicks on, and at least maybe catch a 10 somehow. You don't want to be the guy who puts 2 8s, put a shot in a spotter in the 8 ring, but so, you don't want to overcorrect either. You have to make that
windshield
judgment.
wiper 8s are the worst.
Yeah.
Now, what about a coach? What makes a good wind coach?
Well, there are mainly 2 things, I think. One is, obviously, you have to be able to understand the wind. You have to be able to make sense of it so that you can make corrections. Keep your shooters in the center. I mean, that's the primary thing, right? It probably 90% of the job. The other part, though, is also being is making your shooter comfortable, right? Every shooter is a little bit different. You want them to go up there and be relaxed. You want them to, it's another day on the range. You're not, losing your temper and yelling at them. You've probably seen that too. Some teams, they all, halfway through the match, they're practically fist fighting because of reasons. Instead, you want to be you want to understand what your shooter needs to give you 20 center shots or 15, whatever it happens to be. And that can be different from shooter to shooter. Some need more feedback. Some need more encouragement. Some need correction, like, hey, you're shooting really big. You're top of the 10 ring to bottom of the 10 ring. And you keep them, you get, so it's sort of a little psychology, is mixed into coaching.
Right. The very first person that ever coached me was Bob Mead. Mm-hmm. This is 2010 or so. First time trying out for Team USA. And I went to the tryout and Bob Mead was coaching. And of course, talk about nervous. Not only am I there to try out, all the superstars are there, all the F-class superstars, right? And now I have to, in front of everybody, lay down and try to put up a good score. Mm-hmm. So I'm nervous and I'm laying there, and Bob Mead is like, hey, it's all right. It's just a target. Don't worry about it. Just take some shots, I'm going to let you take 2 or 3 shots, and then I'm going to jump in and start giving you wind calls. So just take your time, whatever. How many shots does your barrel need? I'm like, well, I don't know, about 6 or so. All right, fine. Go ahead. He goes, I'm going to let you shoot 3, and then I'll jump in and start giving you some wind calls. We can start practicing, Mm-hmm. And I start shooting, and he's like, okay, all right, well, that's looking pretty good. Let me, give me let's practice a little bit, give me a right 3. Okay, boom, I give it to him. Like, all right. Oh, that was good. That was a good shot, He said, all right, now give me a right 3.5. And he says, we're going to do one more. No, I told him, I said, one more and I'm good. He said, okay. And then the next one is a high 9 up there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my heart, I was starting to come down. Now my heart's jumping out of my chest. And he says, it's okay. The gun's just not ready. You're fine. It's just the gun. Let's just take a few more shots and then we can go for record. I went on to shoot at 199, if I remember correctly. But he, in moments in which I was about to lose my absolute crap, he just knew what to say, keep me calm, and yeah, it was nothing. But my goodness, I was just a wreck, But he just Bob Mead, that soothing voice, just.
Yep.
And I thought I learned a lot from him over the years, being coached by him. Of course, Nancy Tompkins, she coached me as well, and numerous other coaches. But that's one thing that I've learned from them is how they keep their shooters calm, and it goes a long ways when, especially with a shooter that's like a new shooter that are really good. But if nerves get a hold of them, doesn't matter how good the rifle is or how good they are, they're going to fall apart. But yeah, a good coach goes a long ways.
Yeah. Coaches, Bob was one of my first coaches too. Maybe not the first, but for 2, 3, 4 years there, he coached a bunch of Michigan guys at the Nationals at Camp Perry. So, and Bob was, I had known Bob a little bit by that time, and I think I kind of hooked him up with Leo Sabula to do that. Some of my very early opportunities to be coached by, top level Palma dudes. Tom Whitaker I was so intimidated by him because he was so good. And I felt like he was judging me when he was coaching me. I just felt, oh my God, what did I just do? And what must he think of me? Now that I've done it, I can promise you, everybody out there listening, your coach is not judging you. He wants you to shoot well. You put a 9 out there. Trust me, that's the last thing going through his mind is thoughts of judgment towards you. He's just trying to figure out how to get you back into the center. And Tom and I now are good friends, and we were for a long time, but I was just so I could not calm down because he was such to me, he was the guy, right? And I was just so intimidated as a new shooter. When he and this was like at Palma practices and stuff during the 2003 Palma match, Bob Jones was my coach. And Tom was in the back along with Mid. But during the practices, it was nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I remember my first rodeo with Team USA. I was nervous, man. And I prepared a lot, but you just feel like it's never enough, right?
Yeah.
And the reason is, as a new shooter, now I understand it. I may have had the best gun there, right? Mm-hmm. But because when I would go up against all these guys, they would just crush me. I always thought, well, they must have better guns than me. Mm-hmm. And I found out that no. Once you eliminate the win rate aspect and it just comes down to me having a good gun and me squeezing a good shot, it simplified everything. And all of a sudden it put me up there with those guys. And I was beating a lot of those guys, in Team USA practices when I didn't have to read the wind. So for me, that was one thing that really eliminated stress in my life, knowing that, hey, all I have to do is bring a good gun and listen to the coach. And that's it, right? Yep. And all of a sudden you're up there. I mean, you have just a master wind reader calling your shots, and
right.
Guess what? My gun started shooting scores like I've never seen before when I was driving up.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun, and it still is. But I think coaching it's also very rewarding, but I think coaching is a lot more stressful than shooting.
It's work. You're tired at the end of the day, not just from sitting out in the sun all day, but like I said, you're literally making hundreds of little decisions, and a lot of people don't like making decisions. So imagine having to make one after another all day long, right? You have to decide, is this what you're going to do, and then immediately everybody knows if you made the right decision or not.
Right.
And so you can let that beat you down, or you can just say, you know what, I'm going to be right 90% of the time, and maybe I'll be a little bit off sometimes, and maybe I'm going to miss it completely. But hey, I'm up here. I've worked very hard to be qualified to do this, and I'm gonna put up the best score I can while I'm coaching.
Now, for our viewers, I know they're listening to two wind coaches talk to each other, and they're wondering, well, how do you read the wind? Like what, there's a lot of shooters. That's really what holds people back, right? It's the wind reading. That's what separates the top shelf shooters from the rest of the crowd is they know how to read the wind. In your opinion, how should a new shooter learn to read the wind? What should they be looking for? What do they need to do?
Well, on a rifle range, of course, you got the flags and you have Mirage. Those are the two main things you're going to use. Everybody approaches that a little bit differently. Some people are capable of taking in a lot more information. So they might be looking at, 7 or 8 different flags and, Mirage at 2 different spots on the range. I can't process it that fast. So I will generally try to narrow down and find out what's telling me the truth. And of course that changes during the day, but usually you can find 2 or 3 flags, and you can watch the Mirage at a certain distance, focus your scope so you can kind of see what's going on at a certain distance. And that will keep you, that will give you the information you need to keep yourself centered. So I think for the hurdle for most people is just trying to figure out what to look at. There's so many things, there's a tree over there, there's a bush, up near up on the berm, there's dust coming off from the impacts from the bullet. All of those things are indicators. Not all of them are going to help you put the shot in the center. So other, watching the trace, depending on your eyesight, there are some coaches that is a big part of their toolkit where they're watching and they can see how that bullet is changing direction in the flight. They can say, oh, there's more wind down there than I'm feeling up here, or there's less down there. I'm not getting a hook at the end. All of these things are important, but for a new guy, really, kind of the 80-20 rule, I guess, applies here too. Find something that's going to be right for you most of the time. And once you master those things, master finding a couple flags that are telling you the truth most of the time, then you can start looking at other stuff and gradually expand your toolkit.
I like to work it backwards. Aim center. If it's a sighter, right? Mm-hmm. If it's not so much wind that it'll blow you off target, well, I don't do that anymore, but I used to just simply aim center. Mm-hmm. And let's just say I get an 8. And then I would look at, okay, which of these flags in my head tells me it's going to drift a minute and a half, Mm-hmm. And then I find the 1 or the 2 flags, because there's some that are just kind of leaning. But if I got an 8 down there, I'll go, okay, which flag or Mirage or whatever. If the flags are just hanging down and the Mirage is running fast and I hold center, I get an 8. Well, guess what? I'm looking at the Mirage, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that I used to do all the time is work it backwards. And that just helped me, zero in on which indicator to look at. Mm-hmm. And, that indicator sometimes it was just accurate for that one shot or two or three, right? And halfway through, you get a condition where everything flips over. Now you don't have that indicator, but at least you have some sense of it, Oftentimes shooters, they just start shooting. Mm-hmm. And they just have nothing. They just shoot. And I used to do that as well, but having something to look at. So try it, not you, but them. I'm sure you have a system or two that works well for you, but that seemed to work really good for me when I was starting out, just to reverse engineer the wind call and find an indicator.
I mean, that lets you put a number on what's going on out there. You aim to the center, you have a good zero, and you end up, so well, that's what the wind's worth. I'm looking at it right now, and it put me over there. So another skill I think some of the top coaches have is they have almost maybe a photographic memory where you can remember all these different conditions throughout the day, and it helps them put a number on what's happening right now. So there's a variety of different approaches to it. I think if you ask 4 different coaches, they'd probably tell you they're looking at 4 different things. But what they all are doing is they're using something that's telling them what's different, or what is the value of what I see in front of me right now. What do I need to correct to keep my shooter in the center?
Yeah, and for example, I talk about how now I have different indicators. I can literally get down, look at the conditions, and there's a value that pops up. That's a right 3. That's a right 4. Whatever. I just have this value in my head, right? Mm-hmm. And people go, well, how do you get there? Well, through the years of practice and being right and being wrong. The being wrong taught me more than the being right, because it just kind of helped me calibrate. But it's definitely a skill that needs to be learned, and it needs to be exercised. Like you don't learn how to read the wind and go away for a year or two and come back and you still know how to read the wind. It's not how that works.
Correct. Yes, and I think that's one of the reasons why the U.S. struggles in the big team matches. We don't shoot that many team matches, and B, we don't shoot any multiple target team matches. There is, it's 4-man team, so you got a coach, and so the coaches never really learn all of the how to work together, how to one coach learning from what the other guy's doing, in sense of he just went out, he got a 10 on the 9 o'clock side. I'm gonna put a quarter on. We never do any of that, and so the only time that our coaches really get a good opportunity to practice those skills, which is a completely different skill set than just being a wind reader, is when we go overseas or up to Canada, or in team training. And that's unfortunate. I really wish we had a stronger team shooting culture here, where we could develop some of those skills, which would put us a lot, which would put us right up there with the top teams, the Brits, the Australians, for Palma, where they actually have to worry about us. Right now, they're aware of us, but they're not as worried as I would like them to be.
Well, let's get to work on that.
Yeah.
Ray, thanks so much, man, for being here. We learned a lot. I mean, especially about the reamer making, and I'm sure the viewers picked up some wind reading tips there. So
yeah, happy to be here. That's awesome. So kind of an honor, actually, Eric. So thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Take care.